Healthcare, I knew would always be a big part of the backdrop. And it's more than ever. I mean, focusing on zone 0, like our own health, especially as I'm in the last half of my life now, having greenhouse not just be production of gardens, but maintenance of health. I was at the doctor's, I don't know, like 10 years ago, and they're like, who's your primary care provider? And I'm like, I don't know, my greenhouse, my land, my trees, my wife, my mind, all sorts of plants, so it's not a single person. It's definitely not a hospital. It's my ponds. It's definitely the sunshine, more and more every year, cold plunges, being in unmanaged zone 5 types of wild settings. And I said in my book, probably wrote this like 12 years ago, it's going to be a lot harder to stay healthy than to stay fed in the future. And then, the whole pandemic, whatever that whole thing was and came by, and all the other health challenges that we're seeing, which that is honestly like the least of it in some ways, just coming more and more to the fore. And I think that's, proving itself quite true. Not for everyone. I mean, for the better off among us, if you're in certain parts of the world, staying fed is a problem. So I don't mean to say it's true for all of us, but for many of us listening here, I think that might be the case. But again, just being out in wild settings, for me, skiing's a big one, is a big part of that zone 0 care. Like if I can't maintain my own vigor, I can't maintain zone 1. I mean, all the other zones, zone 1 through 4, are totally dependent on the health of my zone 0. So not that this place wouldn't be pretty cool without me now, especially because it's had a lot of diversity spun into it and will take its own course. But it is dependent on how vigorous we are too. We intermake our landscapes. For me, craft has been a big one. It's also been super practical. I made this subsoiler / pipe layer a few years ago. I've gotten way into metalworking in the last 10 years and lathe working, bowl turning. There's a lot of practical value to that. It's also just a great creative pursuit, taking up kind of ancestral skills more and more, starting about 8 years ago, living, did like a Stone Age living trip for a year. That really has a lot of relevance. That's I think a lot of the permaculture path for me is like just it was organic farming for a while. It's like, okay, what's more baseline than that? Permaculture. Okay, wait, what's more baseline than permaculture? And just kind of like peeling back the layers, right? Of like, what's essential? Like, what does it mean to be human? Where do we come from? Who are we really? Looking back at the wider scope of, prehistory, which is like 98% of human beings is prehistory, is not just this recent version. And also taking cues from like the old timers who live here, who are barely still around. There's not many of them left, and there's less every year, but there's still some people who are in a lineage of being here for 5 to 10 generations in this part of the world who we can learn from. They're almost all gone, being replaced where I live by yuppies mostly. And there's a lot less to learn from the yuppies, unfortunately. So we have to tap into this knowledge of some of these people. This guy is no longer with us. Donnie Jocelyn, he passed away a handful of years ago. More craft work. Sorry, some of these things are maybe slightly out of order, but I've been doing a lot of like different metalworking, which is incredible utility to save money and to run a farm and homestead. Keep teaching courses, some permaculture course shots. This is actually just updated from just a month and a half ago, to our apprenticeships. Lots of amazing groups in here through the years. Every spring, we kind of try to share what's going on here with groups of people from all over the world, totally hands-on. The permaculture course is somewhat academic, somewhat hands-on. It's very hands-on for a permaculture course, but our apprenticeship is all hands-on. We're really trying to focus more and more on public spaces. So we're planting trees at schools, for instance. That's what's happening here. Our places are pretty dialed out. So ever more, the imperative becomes, how do we ripple out what's happening here into the public sphere? That has a lot of challenges because there aren't necessarily the people to care for these systems to get them off the ground. You can plant a tree. A lot of trees will be a waste if you just plant it. Not all species, but many, if you don't give it a few years of care. So that's one challenge there. But we're trying to always look off of the political boundaries of the property into how can we expand the benefits. Because if our neighbors aren't, more dialed in, then, where are we really going here? We're not an island. I have a new piece of my book I'm going to write that I think is going to say, don't say self-sufficient, because there's no such thing as self-sufficient. So you might as well not say the term, because it doesn't exist. There's more self-sufficiency, there's more self-reliance, but we got to do away with this kind of isolationist idea. And working with the young people, is one of the crucial things, I think. So grazing larger animals has been a big focus of ours lately, bringing them throughout the property as much as possible. Planting, we're now planting for clients some of the 10-year-old trees, which I'm realizing is very, very doable if you do it at the right time. We're making hay now amid the agroforestry grazed hedgerows, learning from our neighbor, Harold, who's a whiz with some of this old equipment. And it's really neat for me to see like another layer of integration of not just berry and tree crops and then grazing, but also haymaking for overwintering animals. Again, more and more ferments, as a lot of what the last bunch of years has been like trying to rise to the challenge of dealing with all the value that's coming off the properties. So honey, fruit, flowers, what do we do with all of it? Some new pond projects happening too in the last few years, new gardens, new water catchment, regenerative features. We've had some kids camps. That's been really neat to see the young people get into the systems, always putting up more and more food. But really, I'd say the most recent focus in a lot of ways has just been getting young people to the sites, integrating them. And that's probably a lot of the next few decades.